I think a huge value to people writing things down. I'm going to ask you about writing it down on your phone versus on paper, because I know like a lot of people, like I had I had vision boards for years, 5-10 years, and everything was electronic. Right. And then going through the book, you talk about the paper with the blue ink, which we'll talk about in a second, but that momentum cycle and compounding that, if you don't write things down, right? And you tell people like early on in the book, you're like, you have them do the exercise. There's an exercise in there that says, hey, write these things down. And then I want you to revisit it weekly, right? So I wrote it down the first time and I start revisiting it weekly. And, in the beginning, I didn't believe that I had the ability to like manifest things, right? And then week by week, you start going through and you start checking more things off. And I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting. This is serendipitous, right? Like it wasn't maybe a focal point. Like it was something that I really desired and really wanted, but, maybe I didn't have that attachment to the outcome. And then it was funny because the things that I really held strong, I had deep attachment to. So I started playing with that. And when I would write things down, I would pick the things that I wanted, but then I would just, I would kind of release the attachment in the same way that all the things that were coming true, right? But I think a big thing is like when you have the cycle of that gratitude and you start going back and you're looking at it and you're saying each week, oh man, I actually achieved this. And then those start to compound. When you start to set the bigger goals, your believability is higher, right? And you're like, man, I can do this, right? I can start to achieve these things. But yeah, so before we go down another rabbit hole, talk about like the writing on your phone versus, or doing something electronically, right? Building a vision board electronically or writing a goal down versus like your method, which may seem inconvenient to people, but really comes.
It's not my method. It's the method.
The method.
It's not mine. It's the method. This first started, there was a story about Harvard University graduates. The graduates were asked, how many here have a specific goal or goals that you want to attain in the next 10 to 20 years when you graduate? And a certain percentage said, 70% said, yes, we have specific goals and dreams. Good. How many have them written down? 3% of the class had their goals and dreams that they wanted to attain in their life for the next 10 or 20 years written down. Only 3% had them written down on a piece of paper. This is before computers. This is back in the 60s. 15 years later, the class was brought in. The 3% that had their goals written down had achieved more wealth than the other 97% combined.
Wow.
And they had achieved everything that they written down, with rare exception. Writing things down is mystical and magical, but there's science behind it. Here's why. When you think a thought, it's in your field. Science knows this. It's there as a wave of energy.
Okay.
An electron is a wave, but when it's observed, it becomes a particle. Mm-hmm. So you think a thought, I want to make $100,000. I want to make $1 million a year. I want to make $5 million. I want to have $10 million in the bank. I want a Lamborghini. So you think a thought. It's a wave of energy. When you look at it and see a picture of it, it stops being a wave and becomes a particle because you've observed it.
Okay.
And then when you write it down on a piece of paper, ideally white paper with a pen with blue ink because there's energy in the color contrast to the brain, you transfer what's in the ether into the physical universe. Here's the analogy. If you look up in the sky and you see some clouds and you go, oh, it's an eagle. Within a second, the eagle's gone because the clouds move.
Yeah.
When you think a thought, oh, I want a Lamborghini, it's gone, just like the cloud. Unless you capture it and write it down on a piece of paper, you don't transfer what's in the ether into the physical universe. When you transfer it to the physical universe, it becomes now physical. It becomes real, writing it down. Why is writing it down on paper better than if you type it into your phone or electronic device? When you write, and think of something that nobody does today, cursive writing, which is Palmer penmanship, right? When you write cursive, there are thousands of neurotransmitters firing off in your brain.
Okay.
And thousands of neural pathways because of the movements of your hand. So therefore, when you write down what you want, the impression that it's making in your brain is in thousands of locations.
Okay.
When you type, there are less than 24.
Really?
Yeah, because there's only 24 movements.
Interesting.
And if you use your thumbs and do this, there's 2.
It's even less.
Exactly. So when you type, and I know this all the time because I'm yelling at all my staff when they put everything into a computer and I ask them a question and they don't know the answer.
Yeah.
They have to look into the computer. And I go, I know the answer. How is it that I know the answer of what's going on in your division? And that's all you think about. I got 500 other companies and divisions that I'm thinking about. How come I can remember and you can't? Because I wrote it down and you didn't. You typed it into a computer. And then you just copied and pasted and copied and pasted and copied and pasted. I write things down 20 different times. I'm cleaning up my list all the time and writing it down. That's how you make an impression in the brain. You become what you think about most of the time. You get what you think about most of the time. Listen, knowledge is power, but only if it's used. And it can only be used if it's remembered.
Yeah.
If you don't have it at your mental fingertips, you're a moron. True. You're going to be useless. If you don't have the data at your mental fingertips, you are useless. If you have to continue to look it up in your computer or your phone, you are helpless and you are powerless. But if you have data at your mental fingertips, you are powerful. You have all these weapons right there that you can go, bang, bang, bang. You have it all. But if you can't recall it, you are completely helpless and powerless.